Hi, this is Mike Maloney, and I'm joined by Jeff Clark and Adam Taggart once again. Jeff, what have you got for us today?
Hi, Mike. We've got our full schedule today, slate of things, plus a great meme from one of our good friends in the industry. So stick around for that. Adam, thanks for joining us. And I notice in the background there you're joining us from somewhere different. So tell us where you are.
Yeah, I'm on the road this week. I'm out in Virginia and I'm on my way to Swope, Virginia, which is the home of Polyface Farms, where Joel Salatin runs his operations. For those not familiar with Joel, if you've seen any of the food documentaries like Food Inc. Or Fast Food Nation, or you read Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma, Joel is featured in all of them. He is known as America's farmer, really the poster child for sustainable farming. So I'm going to go out to ground zero for sustainable farming in America and learn from Joel directly how it's all done.
That sounds great. We'll want an update on that, Adam. Well, we're going to jump right in. Here's our article of the day, and it's from Zero Hedge titled "The Great Reset is Here, the New Blueprint for Worldwide Inflation." And Zero Hedge is basically referencing an article written by James Rickards, who's basically talking about the IMF's SDR. So the International Monetary Fund and their SDRs is special drawing rights. It's sort of well, it's not a currency and it's certainly not money, but it's the capital that they give to poor countries when they need it. But what Jim is pointing out here is that could this be an acceleration of replacing the US dollar as the world's reserve currency and moving more toward the SDR? And this quote at the bottom is quite telling. Over the next several years, we will see the issuance of SDRs to transnational organizations such as the UN and the World Bank for spending on climate change infrastructure and other elite pet projects outside the supervision of any democratically elected bodies. And he does note in this article that the IMF has already given some SDRs to some private organizations. So he believes this is an acceleration of the process of replacing the US dollar as the reserve currency. So, Mike, what do you make of this development here from Jim?
I'm going to make a quick comment or so, and then I hand it over to Adam, and then I'll make another comment at the end. But,
Okay.
it says the new blueprint for worldwide inflation. And I find that very interesting. And I believe it, I've been giving seminars on the death of the global dollar standard now since 2009, and it is coming. It's just taking a little longer than I thought, but the world has been through many, many different monetary systems. None of them are permanent. There is no predominant currency or reserve currency that keeps its status. This is a game of musical chairs. And I think that Jim Rickards is onto something here. This is definitely an article worth reading. Adam, what's your take?
Well, I agree for sure that it's an article worth reading. The term that this put in my mind is the term seigniorage. And for those who aren't familiar with it, I'll describe it in just a second. But basically here with the SDRs, the IMF would essentially serve as like a central bank for the world, right? Printing a new form of currency. And seigniorage basically says those who benefit most from the creation of new currency are those who have first access to it, because they get to spend it when it's still valued at whatever its current market value is. And as that new money then comes into the system and then flows out into the system, it begins to have an inflationary effect, and the value of each unit is lower as it adds to the total numbers that are out there. So this, as the article says, the IMF will be giving this money to its cronies, favored parties, whether that's the World Bank, whether it's individual NGOs, whatever, to go out and do pet projects where they'll be able to spend that at full value. So it totally benefits them, but everybody else who's not getting that first direct access is having to just eat the inflationary aspects of it. So it's yet another, yes, it's a replacement for the dollar, which Mike, you've been warning about for a long, long time. But it's just one more way in which the rest of us are just going to have to eat more inflation, whether we want to or not. The last thing I'll say on this is, is, my day job is talking to a bunch of experts in the world of money, and more of them are saying that they see a global move towards de-dollarization as, basically more and more predictable going forward. And it's really not unlike what happened in the late 60s and early 70s when the dollar was still backed by gold, but we were printing more currency than we could actually back. And the world caught on to that. And that's when de Gaulle and others started, calling their gold in from exchanging their dollars for gold, because they knew the dollar wasn't good for it anymore. I think people really are waking up to how many dollars we are now printing. And, now it's not without pain, but they're willing to take the pain to find ways to transact in other currencies besides the dollar. And I think that's only going to continue.
Yeah, the people that you interview are experts on currency, not money.
Sorry, you're right. I say money in the markets because it rhymes, but it's right.
Yeah. I've got two things to say about this. First of all, that effect you're talking about is also what is linked to the Cantillon effect, where it'll push whatever sector they are giving this first use to into a bubble. And so this is another wealth transfer from the average person on the planet to the elites, to the cronies of the IMF and so on. And the other thing is, I encourage everybody to go and investigate what is an SDR. Look this up, and it's backed by the currencies that make up a basket that back the SDR. And so the fiat currencies that are created by central banks are backed by whatever bonds or consols or bunds or whatever debt instrument that central bank buys that indebts the population of that country. They have to pay taxes in the future on this currency that's basically borrowed into existence. And then you put that into the World Bank or the IMF or whatever, wherever they make SDRs. I can't remember. It's in the article, I'm sure, that Jim wrote. But once they do that, then the central bank uses a basket of those, to create the SDR. So it's like one more rehypothecation of the same debt over and over again. And when Jim Rickards talks about a new blueprint for worldwide inflation, he is right. This is just another level of dilution of the currency supply. The real wealth is the goods and services. This is a dilution of the measurement device and the temporary storage container for value. And each time you do that, the device gets smaller. It doesn't hold as much value. So that's all I've got to say on that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. When it comes to fiat currency, it's dilution, D-I-E. Lucian, right?
Yes.
Well said, Jeff.
It is.
Well, on to our tweet of the day, guys. And this is from Alexander Stahl. And he says gold. And he shows this image of the price gains in all these different commodities and assets over the past year. And you can see some of these are triple digits. They're all double digits, including silver, by the way. But you go all the way down to the bottom and there's gold, 0.1% for a 12-month gain. Mike, what's your reaction to Alexander's tweet here?
It's a great tweet. And, you always want to buy the most undervalued asset. It just so happens that on Friday, I bought both gold and silver. With the gold-silver ratio as high as it was a few months ago, for the last year or so, I've been buying almost exclusively silver. And finally, I bought some gold for my personal account. I bought at a ratio of 100 to 1. I bought 100 ounces of silver for each ounce of gold that I bought. But with gold only moving 1% and silver up 45% this year, that shows. But the inflation, will this be the transitory inflation that the Federal Reserve has been claiming? Is it going to be here for 6 months or a year while the economy gets back on track? I know that lumber has crashed tremendously from its highs. It was like up over 300%, and this says 104% here. So it's good to see Some of this actually coming back down to earth, but still 100% is a lot. What do you think, Adam?
I think you stole the smart point I was going to make, which is I think some of the data here, if you compare this chart to the same chart from a month or two ago, it actually does support the transitory argument because, as you said, lumber was actually up over 300% at one point. Not that, as you said, 100% year over year is still pretty painful, especially for folks that are, building a house or, putting the deck on their house or whatever. But I think more important, I mean, you look at this chart, and as a precious metals, long-suffering precious metals, passionista like all of us, it's hard not to just, feel like it's another crazy-making moment where it seems like when commodities finally get their day in the sun, gold is still stuck in neutral. And of course, we can make all sorts of speculation as to why that is. There's all sorts of ways to suppress the price of gold in the paper market. And since gold really is the mirror of truth that reveals the currency printing that the central planners are doing, they have a lot of incentive to try to keep it contained. That said, though, I do want to say this is why a lot of the technicians and the institutional fund managers that I talk to are really bullish on gold right now. And I love it when everybody is coming to the same conclusion, but using a different pathway to get there. And these guys are looking at what's happened with the other commodities, the base metals, the agricultural commodities, et cetera. And they're seeing that gold and silver, but notably gold, have not participated in that yet. They're looking at the technical charts. They're looking at the fundamental reasons. And they're saying, you know what, there's a high probability that there's going to be a catch-up phase right now in the precious metals ahead of us, where they expect those guys, gold, et cetera, to perhaps have a double-digit move from here. And of course, if gold has a double-digit move from here, silver should do very well as well. And the miners that you talk about, Jeff, should do exceptionally well. So I'm actually very excited seeing this, because to me, it's just one more green light on the dashboard saying this is a really good time to consider increasing your precious metals exposure.
Yeah, this is another gift to be able to, that gold is only up 0.1% means that you can acquire it. You get more ounces for your fiat currency. And so it's a gift. Everything else has gone up, and gold is the one that hasn't even moved here on this chart. And I think that is awesome. I have said that there's going to be big deflation before either big inflation or hyperinflation. And a lot of the people that you have interviewed, Adam, have stuck with the deflation story, and I'm sticking with it too. The popping of the bursting of bubbles is deflationary, and we have the almost everything bubble. The exceptions, the things that aren't in a bubble, is gold and silver. And so this gold not moving for the year over last year. So from a year ago, basically no motion at all. That's a wonderful gift where you can pick some up and it needs to catch up with other things. Gold does well too in deflation. It's a crisis hedge more than it is an inflation hedge. And that's
where the store value really comes into play.
Yeah.
Great input, guys. Thank you. So, well, if you're liking this video, please hit that like button for us. That helps us out. And also the notification bell, so you're always in touch with us. So on to our chart of the day. And this is another one from Zero Hedge, visualizing the world's population by age group. And there's a great graphic here that basically shows that the world's population is aging, is getting older. So there's some great info here. But here's the key point to me. Why is this significant? An aging population typically means a declining workforce and an increase of people looking to cash in their pensions. This can put pressure on the working class if taxes are raised. I would probably change that to when taxes are raised. But Mike, you've talked a lot about this. So what's your reaction to this great graphic here?
Yeah, I've been showing a different version of this same thing for many years because it has a big impact on the economy. The demographics is very fundamental to the economy. And one of the things that is happening also is that people are living longer and longer and longer. We don't die from, there's COVID right now, but when you look back through history, people died so much younger, and diseases killed so many more people and so on. Now everybody survives. And you look at the number of under 20-year-olds and the 20 to 39-year-old cohort, and they have a much better chance at surviving into their 80s than somebody that's my age, already 65. And so the world's population is aging. And this is going to be, you look at the resources that we have on the earth and how we're abusing the whole ecosphere. This is actually a scary chart. What do you think, Adam?
Oh, I think it's a frightening chart, and your comments there about limited resources in the ecosphere is a huge driver of actually why I'm going to see Joel Salatin later on today. I do want to point out, because I think in the precious metal world, we get real focused on inflation and potentially the dangers of a hyperinflationary situation, depending upon what the central planners do. But I think it's really important to just step back and acknowledge that the system so desperately wants to deflate. Like when you look at the key macro trends out there, if we just left things alone, right, we would deflate in a heartbeat, right, with all of the bad debts that we have, all the malinvestment. And this population aging, that's a hugely deflationary trend going forward, right? You have many, many more people who are alive and need resources, but who aren't working. Right. And fewer people to support them. And as Jeff said, they're going to be taxed in some way, shape, or form more on a relative basis than previous generations to help support all those old people. All of that is really, really deflationary. And in the presentation that we released last week to the public from our recent conference with Lacey Hunt, he actually talked a lot about this, and he revealed a really stark stat, which is that if you look at the major world economies, the U.S. is now, its average age has been creeping up. It's now 33 years old. And if you compare it to the other major world populations, they're all older than us. Europe's average age is older than us. China's average age is older than us. And Japan's average age is the oldest out there. But China is the world's biggest country. Their average age now is 40 years old. And that's because of the impact of the one-child policy that they've implemented for the past bunch of decades. And what's crazy about that is their average age increases by a year every 2 years. So 2 years from now, the average age is going to be 41. 2 years after that, it's going to be 42. So they are aging incredibly swiftly. So what's going to be super interesting to figure out is how are we going to deal with this, as a global society. And my fear is to try to fight these deflationary forces, which really are forces of nature. The only real tool they have is that printing press. And so it's interesting, but even though deflation's the big kind of monster trending about out there, I think our responses are going to bring around the high inflation that we all fear and why we all own the precious metals.
Yeah, I've always said that the deflation will scare the hell out of the central bankers, because if you've got a debt-based monetary system, that monetary system can't survive in deflation. You have to, they have to just step on the accelerator and see how fast those printing presses can go.
Right.
So their
response is always inflationary to a deflation. And that's another reason why we're so positive on gold. Well, on to some viewer feedback, guys. This is from Russ Land. Actually, we are now worse than serfs. And Mike, this is referencing your video from Tuesday where you're talking about how serfs actually didn't own the land. He says here, quote, the most important function of serfs was to work on the domain land of their lord for 2 to 3 days each week. I don't know where that quote comes from, but he's quoting it from something. Now we work 5 to 6 days a week and can't afford a house. Interesting times we are living in. Pardon me. Mike, what's your reaction to his feedback here?
Well, we really did say it in the last video when I said that Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum said that in the future, you'll own nothing and be happy. Then we had a tweet, I guess, about 10 years from now, everybody will be renting. And so we're all going to be renting from BlackRock and stuff. It's, you'll own nothing, they'll own it. But yeah, we are becoming serfs again, a whole generation of serfs working for, and it's this wealth transfer that's caused by the central banks that's caused all of this. Adam?
Yeah, just violent agreement here. I mean, folks, that's why they call it neo-feudalism. We really are moving back to a world. And Mike, I think we got to tweak that saying of you'll own nothing and be happy. I think it's you'll own nothing and they'll be happy, meaning our new folks over there. The one thing I'll say in the comparison in the tweet there is, the difference is that, look, I don't think anybody would want to go back in time and be a feudal serf, but the lords there, the nobility, they actually did have some sense of responsibility as a caretaker to their vassals and their serfs, because it was those parties that were doing all the work. They were out there growing the food, they were out there building the roads and the bridges and stuff like that. And they knew that, dead subjects or subjects that are in revolt, aren't growing food and aren't building infrastructure. And so there was some sense of, okay, I got to make sure these people have enough to actually exist. And, there's some rule of law and they have some benefits. I don't really think we kind of have that in the future we're moving towards. To me, it feels much more like, I think like Soviet infantry is a much better example, where we're just bodies to be pushed forward to the front, to be sacrificed for the greater mission. So honestly, I kind of feel like the serfs, had a better deal way back then, given where I see us going now. To me, that Soviet infantry model feels like a much better analogy.
I agree, and you're about to go see Polyface Farms. And one of the things I'm doing is trying to make a permaculture, 100% organic, sustainable permaculture farm. And I'm trying to do it all electric and solar, and hopefully make it the world's first carbon negative farm. And so I'm trying to make sure that, I did take on some debt recently because I see that after the deflation, there will be big inflation. And it's like, if we go into inflation that's higher than the interest rate that you're paying, it's the bank paying you to take the currency off their hands. And I want to be in that position. But you always want to I always want to make sure that the only debt that I carry is something that I can pay off very quickly from other investments and so on, so that I'm never owned by somebody else.
Yeah, good point. Okay, well, on to our meme of the day here. But first, if you've not read Mike's book, the link is down below. You can do so for free. And there's Adam's wealthyon.com channel as well, if you want to subscribe to that. As you heard, he's got some great guests coming up and some great information. So subscribe to that if you haven't. Well, on to our meme, and this is from our friend Peter Spina. Peter and I have been friends for a long time. Peter's been friends with Mike a long time, many of us here at Gold Silver. So Mike, tell us about this meme. This is a good one.
Well, we were just talking about debt and not letting anybody own you. And here we've got the national debt is the little girl. There's a little boy looking into the end of this hose, and that's future generations. And she's got the hose crimped and she's about to let it go. And he's going to get hit in the face with all of this debt. And that's exactly what is happening to generations, the younger generations. They're going to be stuck with the bill, never being able to buy a home, and it's all because of the central banks. I want to thank you guys both for joining us here, and we'll see you later, everybody. Bye, Adam. Bye, Jeff.
Bye, you guys. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.